Welcome to Trimble Business Center Aerial Photogrammetry. What's new in 5.90? Our next dataset will handle following topic: what if the flying height that is stored in the EXIF header of your drone is wrong, or stored with a wrong value in comparison to real existing ground control points. And so if this is the case, then we introduce now in TBC a new functionality, and this is exactly what we want to show now with our next dataset, which in this case is the DJI Mini 2, where we can set a new GNSS height for our imported drone. The data is flown in Sweden, so I will prepare again a TBC project with the according and correct coordinate system, and then we will take a look at this topic. So here we go. We are here in the Swedish coordinate system 1800, and nothing new, you already know it. We are going to our image folder and we will drag and drop, in this case here, the image folder into TBC, and as always we open up the import US data panel and we will see now all the information we can read from the EXIF and XMP tags. So the DJI Mini 2 has as model name FC7303. It has an EXIF header entrance with 4.49 millimeter focal length. The pixel size of the DJI Mini is 1.65 micrometers, and DJI stores the height above ground in the XMP header. So in our case now, this is our main topic, the 41.5 meter is a relative height that is correctly set here. Unfortunately, it's not in correlation to WGS 84, the height, or perhaps it is, but somehow the value stored where it's located is not correct. So we will see this because we have for this data set also ground control points, and this will be for us a nice tool also in TBC, where we can now change the drone data in accordance to our ground control points. The DJI Mini 2, also we check in this case if there are any values or tags entered for the GNSS quality. For this data set, or in general, I assume also the DJI Mini 2 does not include a tag about the GNSS quality. So therefore we set the quality to low, which means we will then not use it in this case for the absolute adjustment. Just as a quiz question, you remember the sensor pixel size was a question mark. So therefore this is exactly a new camera now for TBC. So the database did not include the FC7303 model. And therefore we created now a new camera, which means the next time you will fly a DJI Mini 2 on this computer here, it will fill out this value with 1.65, and when you see that your drone has a different pixel size, let's say 1.63 or 1.68, and this repeatedly always comes back, then you can of course change this, and then this will be updated in this new camera database. So let's import the data, and after the data has been imported and the overviews are generated, we will then take a closer look to it. Okay, here we go. The data is imported. What I will now do here for this example, I will open the 3D view and we will take a side view to our data. That means in my case here, when we look from the side, we can now see here that here are my drones, and then here is 41 meter lower my area that I want to process for this drone project. the height above ground value, also just to come back here, when you go to the plan and you go here to properties, you will then see here these 41.5 meter. This is the height value here that is then used to project here this flight block plan. Okay, so far so good. What we will do now is we will now import our ground control points for this project, and then we will again take a look on our side view. So we imported the control points, and when we take now a look, then we can now see that the control points are not 41.5 meter below our drones, because this should be somewhere here around where my control points are on the ground. At least the average part should be this part here. As we assume that your ground control points are correct as you measured them in your specific coordinate system based here on terrestrial survey instruments, we assume that the control points, they are correct. And therefore what we allow now is when your GNSS has a low quality, if your GNSS has a high quality, then normally we assume they are centimeter accurate, and then we do not allow here to shift the GNSS. But in our case, the GNSS has a low quality. That means in general already the data is somewhere only 3 to 10 meter correct in position. So what we want now is to initialize the data in the right way. We want to move our GNSS, which is here our drone images, 41.5 meter above the control points. And this is now possible. So what you can do is now you can go to your US block, and when you right click the US block, then this set height shift is available. Again, only when your GNSS has a low quality. If it's a high quality, this will be grayed out, because you don't want to lose the GNSS height high quality standard, because then then you need in this case here to do again a baseline processing or something else. So therefore, if this is the case, we can set a height shift. The question is, how much do we want to height shift? And this is where you can use again now these great tools that TBC offers by default. So what I use here is the inverse tool, and what I do is I will here select a control point, anyone that is here showing a good average, and then normally you can click somewhere on your polygon here on the ground. It does not have to be perpendicular down here. You just click here on this point, and then you see here it separates this whole thing into average elevation height, and this is really the elevation. So in our case about minus 35 meters, which means we will elevate with plus 35 meters our drone data upwards. So there we go. We click here right, set the height, and then we will lift up with 35 meter our GNSS. We say set, and when we set this data, all our images are lifted up, and when we now take a look, you see it makes now much more sense. Our control points are now really 41.5 meter below our drones. This set height GNSS value is a shift, but it's not that it here, in this case here, cannot be repeated. So in case you are not sure, you could re-go back into it and then say, oh no, it was not 37, it was 38 or 48. Then you just re-enter the value. In this case, let's here make it too big, let's say 60. Then you can say 60, then it will again from the default setting shifted. Yeah, of course this is now wrong. So in my case here, I want to go back and again enter here 37. And then when I go back to my 37, then here the data is exactly again at this stage. Yeah, so this is really a fixed set height shift. And then we can now from this state or this initialization, we typically call it, start our next step, which will be then the adjust photo stations. Of course, the error flags are here showing, and when you take a look at the message, no surprise, it shows exactly these 37 meters. But this is good, I mean, because in the end something was wrong in your data. So this is just indicating, okay, look, we are now working with some edited data, and we will now start this. Again, for us, with the low GNSS quality, we will now run here the adjustment. And after the adjustment is done, which is a relative adjustment, we will then still measure the ground control points to make our data fit to the ground control points. And the GNSS standard deviations are set here to 10 meters anyway. So that means we will see that afterwards the images will not be perfectly exactly at 37 meter like here set. Therefore, let's take a look then after this is done to our result, and then we can see how this worked now with the DJI Mini 2. So the DJI Mini 2 has now run through the relative adjustment, and again we will take here a look at the report. I want to see here how the image is connected. So in our case here, all 347 images have been able to find tie points to each other, and we then also have here again, as this is a relative adjustment, the focal length and the pixel size did not change, and only the distortion model has changed. And then, well, of course, the focal length changes in accordance to the principal point that has changed, but yeah, that's fine. And we have then here our distortion model, which is nice. And of course, we have here the GNSS only with 10 meters. Therefore, we have not very high accuracies in our GNSS and in our terrain points. But this is, in our case here, not the important part, because we have now our adjusted images, and we can now, because we have a good relative height to the control points, easily now go into adjust photo stations and now start to measure our ground control points. So as normally you would do, you go to absolute adjustment, you go to your point list, you select your control point, and then when you select the control point, you hit here the measure button, and then it will now show all the predicted images there where the control point is located. And this is now again very important that we have set up here the GNSS correctly in accordance to the control points, because now we can see all the images that are needed to do our measurement, and we can now start to measure the ground control points here and go through the images and make these measurements. And then we can afterwards run, after we measured all the ground control points or all necessary ground control points, the adjust photo stations with ground control point, and then continue this process. As this is a technical video, I still want to make it super long. I already have done this, so I will just load now this step where all the control points have been measured and the adjustment have been done, and we want to take here a look at the result. So I did use the same project. I did not find the previous one, so we are now here still in the same project. I measured now the control points. I also added a couple of the control points as checkpoints because this dataset has a nice distribution here, which is also a nice tool to check how the quality of our project in height and position is, because the checkpoints will be just used as floating points in this project. So here we go. Let's take a look at the report after the adjustment has been applied. And then we can see now the result. So in this case now the camera calibration has changed. We have now the pixel size here, but which is still very similar. The focal length percentage-wise is still at the same area. Then the distortion should be similar because distortion model is already existing from the relative adjustment. And again, the GNSS is now not used with a high precision, but our control points, so they are set up with a very high accuracy, and therefore we can get here, well, this is almost too good for me, but within below a centimeter in position and 1.2 centimeter in height. Yeah, I would doubt it that we really could measure below 1 centimeter, but I take it. That's awesome. But we will take a look at the checkpoints, and let's take here a look at the checkpoints, or perhaps in general, of course, we can see, which is very typical, that to the outer part of the block, the standard deviations, they increase. Also, there is some systematic value in the GNSS, but we are talking here about values about almost half a meter or a meter. Important are now our control points itself, so they are fitting very nicely. And now the checkpoints, and in the checkpoints, wow, okay, I will take this every day. This is very good. So really also in the checkpoints we have here below centimeter accuracy and in height 1 centimeter. Yeah, it's too good, but I take it in this case here. Then we would be now here done with the orientation. We could then here again go to create deliverables and start to run now our deliverables for this project. So thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one. Goodbye.